one of the people that worked here came in to pick up stuff from me at the other place that I had worked at as a locksmith and said that they had a job opening for a locksmith at the hospital. So I applied 23 years ago, and they hired me. And I wasn't nervous about being the only woman in the shop until I realized I was the first woman and only woman in the shop. So then, yeah, then I got a little gun shy about that, but I came in, and once these guys understood that I knew what I was doing, they embraced me. They were very great. I taught them things, they taught me things, and I stayed in the shop for about 16 years. If you're a young woman, if you like puzzles, you like putting things together, you know, you like looking at blueprints. If you like those things, you can probably find a trade that will line up with.
There's a major crisis facing healthcare facilities management. We have aging employees, aging buildings, and aging infrastructure. We've created the Healthcare Facilities Network, a content network designed specifically to help solve for these three pressing issues in healthcare facilities management. We bring on thought leaders and experts from across healthcare facilities management, all the way from the C-suite to the technician level, because at the end of the day, we're all invested in solving the aging issue. Thanks for tuning in. Look at our videos. You will find that as a theme across our content. This is the Healthcare Facilities Network. I'm your host, Peter Martin.
Donna's got a really interesting career path, which I want to get into. And we actually first met back in probably 2017 or 2018, when my former business partner, myself, Jack Goslin, and me were out at MetroHealth doing a project for the great VP there, Karen Detloff. And we were speaking to all of the folks in the department. It was when you were in your old hospital. Now you're in your new hospital. Yep. And Donna was one of the folks that we spoke to. And at the time, you were in the locksmith department. And really, one of the things I want to get to in the last, since that time, you have really kind of climbed up and continued to progress in your career. And yet you do have an interesting career path. So we met Donna, then had a lot of energy. You know, it's funny, when you go to a hospital, I'm sure you see this, right? You get different vibes from them just from what you pick up. Like if you're sitting in the front lobby, if you go to the cafeteria, just meeting people, talking to people. And you came in, ball of fire, which was great. and then saw Donna again at the ASHE annual this year, and you did a great presentation on lithium batteries. And that's another thing that we want to get to, because I mean, you're very passionate, right? And I think that comes through, and people will probably see that come through here. Tell us a little bit about your career path, if you don't mind.
How does one like me end up in the actual shops and in the trades? And especially as a female, and if we go back, I won't tell exactly what my age is, but I graduated high school in 1992. So in the 80s and in the 90s, people didn't know what to do with these ADHD kids. We were just bad kids that wouldn't sit still and didn't pay attention. So there wasn't really a lot of effort even put into what we're going to do for our futures. You know, there was just kind of, I think, an assumption that we're just not going to really do much. So I was advised, I had taken auto mechanics when I was in high school, and I was advised by my guidance counselor, you should probably go into the OWE work program. It's an optional work environment. It's a way of basically helping kids that just can't seem to find a way, kind of find a path. So I did, and there was an opening for a locksmith apprentice in Lakewood, Ohio. And my teacher thought that I would be a strong candidate, and he sent me and a couple of the other students, and I passed the shop owner's test. He had a little mechanical test there, so I was able to pass that, and so he hired me. So it was an after-school job for just a couple hours a day. And when I graduated in 92, he asked me, do you want to come on full-time? And I found I really liked it. And again, with the whole ADHD thing, you got to find something and you got to be passionate. And if you are, you'll stick with it. So I did.
What did you like about that, Donna?
It was always like solving a puzzle. So that was the first part of it, was always solving a puzzle. There's a lot of artwork that goes into like the older locks, and being in Lakewood, We have the fancier type of old-fashioned mortise locks. They have the very decorative trim, and you had the crystal handles. You have the just the intricate brass and stuff that was done. Obviously now everything's not as decorative, but it was then. But even just the lock itself it's a puzzle. So it kept me fascinated, and I did it for 10 years in the private, in the private sector. And then I saw that one of the people that worked here came in to pick up stuff from me at the other place that I had worked at as a locksmith, and said that they had a job opening for a locksmith at the hospital. And I'm like, a locksmith at a hospital? I'm like, oh, how great would that be? I'll never be in the snow again, in theory. So I applied 23 years ago, and they hired me. And I wasn't nervous about being the only woman in the shop until I realized I was the first woman and only woman in the shop. So then, then I got a little, I guess you'd say a little gun shy about that. But I came in, and once these guys understood that I knew what I was doing, that I wasn't just here to, to be a number or whatever, they embraced me. They were very great. I taught them things. They taught me things. And I stayed in the shop for about 16 years.
Wow, that's a long time. So give a little bit, if you don't mind, like the hospital that you came into. Tell people how big. I mean, it wasn't the state-of-the-art hospital that you're in now. It was a massive, sprawling complex. Can you give a little bit of context for what you walked into?
So MetroHealth is the safety net hospital for Cleveland, but we compete we are still in competition, or I guess you'd say friendly competition, with like the Cleveland Clinic and University Health Systems. So we do try to keep up with them, but again, we're the safety net hospital. And a lot of people assume that we get these county dollars thrown at us. It's not much. It's $30 million a year. So that doesn't cover anything. But again, we are the safety net hospital, and you have to have a passion for wanting to help people and believe in the mission and why you're here. And I did. I always thought that, and I still do to this day. I feel that what MetroHealth does is important and it's needed. And we serve an underserved population. And I feel proud when I go to work. I feel that I'm not just helping myself, I'm helping my community, I'm helping the people I work with. You have a very good sense of I guess community once you work for a safety net hospital.
Yeah. How two questions just based on the locksmith portion of it. The person who offered you the job from Metro, who was coming into your last place of employment, was that because you had worked with this person over the years and they saw something in you, or why did they offer that to you?
So I did know a few of the people, the maintenance technicians that from picking up parts and stuff. And so the gentleman that I did know, they vouched for me. That, yeah, she really knows her stuff. She's the counter person at Cleveland Key. That's where I came from. She's the counter person there. She helps everybody. So they vouched for me. And then when I went through my interview, they had a bunch of set questions. And obviously with the 10 years experience I had, I was able to answer those easily and effectively.
And so that was what, 5.3 million square feet for your old hospital?
I believe that's right. Yes. Very good.
I don't remember everything, but that number is seared into my head for some reason.
We still have those buildings. I don't know if you're aware, but yeah, those buildings unfortunately are still standing. There is a plan. I'm not 100% sure what the plan is, but there is a plan to tear them down here in the future. They are looking to do that.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, at the annual, when I ran into you and had a nice discussion with Karen, and she was kind of updating me on everything and told me that those old buildings are still standing.
Yeah. Yep. And they still have to be maintained. I can't cut any of my fire protection. That's one of the big questions is, well, do we have to still pay for this and update it? If the building's still there, we have to update it.
Right. You just can't forget about it, right? I mean, it's
right.
It's right there. It's, right where your old campus is. Tell me, so locksmith for 16 years at the hospital, that's a long run, but then you you left the locksmith department and you evolved into fire, life safety, compliance management. Was that a difficult, like, did you want to move on? You were there for a long time. Tell me a little bit about that evolution.
Absolutely. So I was perfectly content. My day magically ended every day at 3:30. It was great. I was perfectly content where I was, but I'm sure you're familiar with Michael Dragatinovic, better known as Mike D.
Yep.
So Mike D,
great guy.
he is a wonderful person. He is probably my mentor, and he is directly responsible for this mess of having me in this. Everybody knew that I had pestered the previous compliance manager for a copy of the NFPA 80 2010 edition, because I was responsible for the doors and the locks. So I didn't want to make mistakes. So I sat there and read it cover to cover and would double check it when I would go to make a new installation or do any types of repairs. And because I basically had the book memorized at some point, I had to keep detailed records for the key records for the hospital. And you have to be organized. So Mike D saw something in that and thought, man, she'd be great for this new position that we created for the fire life safety compliance. So supervisor. So I did that in 2019. I made that switch. Coming from the shop into management, it was a little bit of a tricky transition because now I'm going from working with the shop guys to now being in management. But I never let it go to my head. I've always spoke to them with respect and treated them the way I did when I worked with them. Because at the end of the day, we still work together. It's not about me managing them or them managing me or any of that. It's about us working together to make sure we manage the systems that we have here.
Are you pleased you made that transition?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, about keeping somebody interested in what they're doing, I absolutely love the code, and it changes enough and evolves enough that I have to keep reading about it and keep on my game, so to say. If you ask me to read a novel, I will never read the book. I don't like to sit down and read a book, but I love to read code. It's one line at a time, and then it changes and moves on right on to the next thing. So it has that fast pace that I like to stay with.
Like, can you sit there and just read a code book? Like a person would sit there and read a book?
Well, with purpose. So I can't just pick it up and read it. I have to, so you have to ask me a question. You have to be looking for something. So one of the questions recently that had me in a code book for a long time was if you have a single address and you have a fire alarm system, but you have multiple buildings, do the fire alarm systems have to communicate? So, and it's still a gray area. I'm still reading the code, but I will sit there then and just keep reading through the NFPA 72, the Ohio Fire Code, the building code. Then I'll start going online and starting to look through the different blogs and stuff that people have out there. So yeah, I can literally, with a purpose, continue to just read through the book, the code books. I don't know. It's weird.
Have you, no, obviously, NFPA code's a little bit different, but have you, so, I mean, it's very specific, but I'm just trying to think back, like in your life, did you always you said you like problem solving, and obviously this is a form of problem solving, but have you liked codes before, or did you just kind of discover this when you moved into the hospital world?
That is a fantastic question. So ironically enough, I enjoyed law. And that's what code basically is. And when I was younger, I loved the idea of becoming a lawyer, not a criminal lawyer, like a business lawyer, But again, when I was in high school, the paths I was on weren't exactly lining up with that. And then when I found out how much the schooling was or how long I'd be in school, I'm like, oh, I don't think I can do that. And then when I came here, they had a union shop. So I read the union books and understood that, and we did a couple different things here that improved some of the things with the union for the staff. And from there, that's when I picked up that, like I said, the NFPA 80 and read that. And it's all pretty similar if you ask me. If you understand, if you have a basic understanding of how law is written, that's what code is. And it's not for everybody. Not everybody gets that. And that's one of the things I think I offer the people here at Metro. I take what it says in the book and I make it to where you understand it. And I try to do that very effectively and efficiently to where you're not, and I try to do it where people don't feel stupid that, well, what this is trying to say is that you can't block the exit, because if we do, we increase the chances of, causing harm to people in an emergency. That if there was an emergency, they wouldn't be able to get out if that exits are obstructed. And then they understand that.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask you that. Like sometimes we've all worked with people who they know codes, they know standards, but they have a difficult time translating that to the folks that you're dealing with on a daily basis, clinicians, people whose job it is to not know that. So how do they respond to you when you talk to them about codes and standards and why you can't do something? I imagine your approach is better because you're approachable and you break it down for them, but how does that go over?
So one of the things that I learned in the last few years here is to start the conversation with, my objective is not to tell you no. My objective is to find a way to help you be able to do what you want to do safely. And if there's a safe path to do it, then we'll do what you're looking to do. So that's one of the ways that I started. So it's that time of the season to where people come out with the Christmas decorations. And so we started that conversation yesterday, and the person previously last year that had gone through, I had to hear about that. And I'm like, well, I take a different approach. You can't have this but you can have this. So if you take something away, I've noticed if you give them something back, people are much more receptive to that. It's all about presentation and how you present it to people. If you start with a negative and you end with a negative, then you've left them with a negative impression. If you start with the negative and you tell them, but let's look at what you can do, people are much more receptive to that.
What's interesting about your answer, going back to when you said you wanted to be a lawyer, think about this. It's funny, like in careers, and this is why I love doing this stuff, just talking to people. Like sometimes you don't know when you're going through your career how it's going to help you down the road. But yet when you look back, you're like, oh man, that love of law, I'm not a lawyer, but that's so foundational to what you do now, and you're your own lawyer.
Yes, it parallels, and I would have never guessed in a million years that this is where I would have ended up. But ultimately, I've ended up where I started out wanting to be, if that makes sense, where I had ambitions to be. Yep.
You're not a lawyer, but that's where you want to be, and you're kind of there. Right. Like you say, I think one of the things about Cleveland, and I didn't necessarily know this until Jack and I started working out in that area, it's a very competitive healthcare area. You got big healthcare players there. You guys are obviously one. It's very competitive. It's very high stakes. And there's a lot of great healthcare just in that, right off Lake Erie.
Yep.
And
if you have a diagnosis that you don't like, you can literally walk out the door, take a right, and go down the street to the next organization and get a second opinion. And we do work collectively together. So not just as the healthcare providers, which they do a fantastic job working. On my way in, I saw a Cleveland Clinic ambulance leaving. But we collectively speak too in the facilities departments. So I've got great friends over at the Cleveland Clinic as well as university hospitals. And I wouldn't trade those relationships for anything. We collaborate together and try to solve each other's problems too.
Yeah, I think it's one of the unique things about the field. You guys all kind of feel the same pain despite having differences in your organizational structure. You all deal with the same things. Let the people above kind of fight, do what they do.
Right, they can compete, but we're here to make things better.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. You were talking about codes and standards, and I don't want to belabor it, but I was reading your your LinkedIn profile, and I love you have a line in there. I have a weird love of codes and standards.
Yes.
And then talking about enjoying the back and forth. Let me ask you a question, like with the back and forth, because I've heard this before from folks who love code and interactions with surveyors and kind of those governing bodies. You know the code really well. You probably know it better than the people surveying your facility at sometimes. That's me saying that, not you. Right. So how do you, though, interact with them during that survey process because you do enjoy the back and forth. You can tell you enjoy the back and forth. You want to be a lawyer, so you must be going back and forth your entire life.
I do.
How do you handle that?
So I'll give you two stories, two quick ones. So the first one was I was still relatively new when we had our joint commission in the old building. And up on our top floor mechanical space, it wasn't sprinklered, but it was a 2-hour concrete mechanical space. Inside that was a telecommunications room for one of the cell carriers so that people in the neighborhood could get cell signals. And so they had that room locked, and it was their equipment in our mechanical space. They had a clean agent system in there to protect their system. They paid for the maintenance of it. They had people come out and inspect it. So the Joint Commission guy wanted in there. So, okay, I knew that somebody wrote the code on the back of the wall, so I went ahead and let him in there. The fire extinguishers had been checked. The clean agent system had been inspected recently, so everything was good there. So then he wanted to know where it was fed from, what circuits it was on. It was not on a life safety circuit. So he wrote us for that. And I stood there dumbfounded, and then I thought, okay, I'm not going to say anything. And by the time we got back down to our conference room, I'm like, so I have to ask. I'm like, it's not a life safety system in this instance. It's here just to protect the equipment, not the people. The room is the life safety feature. The extinguishers are the life safety features. So he's like, he said, okay, he goes, it's a good question. I'll take it back to SIG. Didn't matter. At the end of the day, I lost. We ended up having to put it on a life safety circuit. Our most recent Joint Commission, it was a full-time surveyor, Joint Commission surveyor, and my documents I learned from Karen Detloff. So my documents are in order, and they're the way they need to be. They show if there's a deficiency, it shows it. It shows the way that it was repaired, everything. So my contractor that did my annual flow test for my fire pumps used the NFPA 2023 edition of the NFPA 25. And that's what he cited me for. And I'm like, but it's all the same methods. And he goes, it doesn't matter. The Joint Commission standard says that you'll use the 2011 of the NFPA 25. I'm like, but it's the same thing. It was tested actually a little bit above what it was back in 2000. Doesn't matter. It's not. And so I sat there and pouted for about 2 hours as he continued to go through the other books. So you ask how I handle it. Most days graciously, other days I pout. 3 days later, we sat there and we talked about it. And he's like, boy, I could tell that stung you. I'm like, it did. He goes, but that was the worst finding I had in your books. He goes, and you should be proud. I'm like, but I don't want any finding.
Yeah, right. It doesn't matter to you, right? It's a finding.
Right. It's a finding. And at that, it's a fail. So, but he's like, but my job is if I don't find something, then I fail. So he goes, this is a win for you. And Mike D was even trying to console me. He goes, it's okay. It's a win. I'm like, it's not. So yeah, I can pout a little bit when I lose.
That kind of, that in some ways it leads into the next question. I think if you go back to your earlier years, whether it be when you were just locksmith, not in the hospital, or a locksmith in the hospital, but is there a lesson that you learned? And I think you actually just described one, but is there a lesson you learned that shapes how you are a professional today? Is there something from your past that's helped shape who you are today in this role?
There's two. I'm going to give you the first rule that I live by. And anybody that knows me or has talked to me and works with me knows this, my contractors, my coworkers, everybody. The rule that I live and die by here every day is don't make the news. And people think that I'm joking when I say that, don't make the news. And what that means is if you make thoughtful, careful decisions, if you're following the letter of the code, you're trying to remain compliant, you're doing the inspections you're supposed to do, you're not cutting corners, you're repairing the things that need to be repaired, you're conducting the fire drills that need to be done, then you shouldn't make the news. And if you do, you won't make the news in the negative light. There's been a lot of recent fires in long-term healthcare, skilled nursing. And that's the first thing I do is I read these things, and And it's failures of people not having their systems inspected, not doing their fire drills. Those things will put you on the news. I actually sent out an email with the one guy from Maryland that just had this dumbstruck look on his face. And my email started with, "Don't be this guy." And then I put the article there of how they could have avoided all of this if they would have just done what they should have been doing to remain compliant. The other rule that I live and die by, especially at work in my approach to anything else, you treat the hospital or any organization that you work for like your mother or father are there. And if you do that, then you'll deliver top care every day.
If you like this video, please like and subscribe to the network. And more importantly, share it with your colleagues in the healthcare industry. Together, we can solve the aging crisis that's impacting all of us.
Folks who are maybe outside of facilities realm, they don't understand the impact that you and your team has on the patient and on the safety. And you know, you were talking about don't make the news. So I'm out, you know, our office is here in Boston, although we have office in Dallas and Fort Lauderdale and Salt Lake City. But here in Boston, over the last, I think, 3 or 4 months, we've had 2 fires at long-term care facilities. Yep. One from late, maybe you saw it, late summer. I think it was summer.
It was July 15th.
July. Okay. Very good. So yeah, that was, I mean, terrible. What did you find as you looked at that? And I think it was 11 folks who died, right? In the building.
It was 10 initially, but yeah, you're right. I think one of the people that had been in critical condition finally did succumb to their injuries. It was a tragedy. It really was. And that was the email that I sent of the one fire inspector. Had this ridiculous look on his face. And so that's what I sent out to my folks. Don't be this guy. Yeah. They failed to do their inspections. The owner of the facility failed to do their 5-year internals. I'm not sure if they were doing it didn't say that they were doing their quarterly sprinkler inspections. They alluded to that they were doing their annuals, but I think that there's still more to come out about that. But the 2 things that really, it upset me on a personal level was they were not conducting their fire drills. They had no records for 2 years of fire drills. And you could see that by the way that the residents didn't know what to do. And then the worst part of that was when the cameras captured the staff abandoning the buildings without helping the residents. That's what was just, it was horrifying. You know, our staff, we had an incident. I won't go into great detail, but we did have an incident that highlighted that we check boxes. When we do the code, it says you must do X, Y, and Z. And so we check those boxes. And sometimes it doesn't say some of the things that you should do or what or would be a good practice. So in your fire drills, it tells you need to close the doors. You need to pull the pull station, all those things, shut off the med gas, the oxygen. It tells you all those things in your fire drills. What it does, it tells you to use your extinguisher, and if you can't use the extinguisher, to evacuate. What it doesn't tell you to do in your fire drills is how to put a person that's on fire out. So, and people don't really think about that it goes all the way back to when you were a little kid, your safety town days, your stop, drop, and roll. And if your friend's on fire, get a coat or a blanket. And so we had an incident, but our staff, it was just amazing. They responded exactly the way they were supposed to. I had 6 smoke detectors succinctly go off. And then in the middle of that, somebody pulled the pull station, and then the 7th smoke detector went off. So from their training, that close the doors, pull the pull station, they did that. But again, because we had never trained to how to put a person out, the nurse had burns on their arms trying to pat this person out. So since then, we've updated our fire drill training to include if a person is on fire or their clothing, our blankets and our towels have fire retardants in them that you can use those to smother the fire, to put the person out.
What are other ways that you increase your knowledge and that you're always learning? Are there other things you do?
Mike D's going to love this answer.
Sorry, Mike.
He tells me to go get other hobbies. So I watch a lot of documentaries. I watch a lot of engineering documentaries, fatal engineering catastrophes, engineering disasters. Again, don't make the news, don't make one of those documentaries, you'll be okay in life. But
Yeah.
I enjoy that stuff that does. I do watch a lot of stuff on the solar system and the universe. So yeah, I'm always learning. Um, I've tried reality TV. I've tried, I watch some of the game shows every now and then because they're interesting and inquisitive, but I don't watch reality TV because I lead a real life. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's not as entertaining as theirs, but it's, I lead one, so I don't want to watch one on TV. I do go out, I enjoy the outdoors. In the summertime, I absolutely enjoy the outdoors and stuff, but I'm still always learning.
Yeah.
It's my son wants to do kayaking. I thought, okay, well, let's delve into that and see what it takes to where we can go, what would be the best kayak or the safest kayaks for us. I don't like water that's deep that I can't see my feet in, so let's find a place that lines up with.
Did you? Did you find a place?
Yeah, there's a couple of them down in Canal Fulton. There's a couple of little streams and stuff that we can go down and do that with.
So, just the last thing relative to, obviously you're a woman, you're a female, you came in 18 years ago. There weren't a lot of you, as you said, and you were the first
Right.
and the only. But what advice, or, as a woman in this profession who's advanced, what advice would you give to maybe a younger woman, the younger you, about the field and how to, obviously you're succeeding, how to go about forging a career in something that you're obviously passionate about?
That right there, that's key. You have to be passionate about it. You can't just do this like you're at a factory, that you're taking part A and assembling it to part B to get part C. You have to have a drive and a passion for what you're doing. There was a young lady that worked here with me. We hired her. It was in 2010. She was a plumber. She went on to be the main plumber for the Cleveland Browns Stadium for like 12 years too. So she definitely knew her thing. God bless the woman. She tried so hard. Her name was Jenny Williams. She tried so hard to make a plumber out of me. I'm like, I don't want to be a plumber. I don't want to do this. So if you're not passionate about it, it's not going to help. Find what you like. I think that there's really, in the general majority of people, there's two types of facilities people. There's electrical and then there's mechanical. I am mechanical. So everybody that's held the role prior to me in our compliance roles came from a fire alarm background. So our fire alarm throughout the organization was top notch. I don't understand the electrical part of it as much, so I focused on the fire pumps and the sprinkler systems, and I have advocated and made a lot of changes to help make sure that we don't have contractors that abandon pipes in place, that they just pull the heads, cap them, and leave these long legs. I'm on my fire pumps more than just the once a year and the monthly. We're making sure that they're working the right way. We're not just doing the churn test, and if it's smoking and spitting water, well, it's okay until the annual comes up and the contractor says, hey, you need to rebuild it. Our people are on top of doing that, making sure that everything's working the way it's supposed to. Our guys are in-house, even if it's a small enough project, we try to have our guys change some of the heads, the ones that are licensed. So you have to have a passion for it. If you're a young woman, if you like puzzles, you like putting things together, you like looking at blueprints. There's indicators in your life that you'll see. You like geometry. If you like those things, you can probably find a trade that will line up with. And I stress this more now than ever. I just had the conversation again with my son last night. I said, I don't have infinite words of wisdom to point you into a direction into any one particular career path other than the trades. And my son's just like, well, I want to be this. I'm like, I understand that, and you might want to do that as a hobby, but with AI out there right now, people will pay insane amount of monies to make their toilet work, to make their light switch come on, and to have their home built, to have heating and air conditioning. I don't like to sweat. I will pay whatever it takes to make my house cool. People will do that, and AI is not going to replace that. So that's something I really want to stress to the young people, is that facilities management, maybe not as the manager, but definitely as a tradesperson, that right now is AI proof.
Yeah, no, it's funny, and that's part of Here on the Healthcare Facilities Network, that's the reason we just started doing these things, I don't know, 3 years ago now, whenever, it's because we're not, I mean, I saw this in recruiting, you see this when you're recruiting
Yep.
people, there's just not people out there. And,
No.
you know, it's, you're very, very true. We just released a show last week. Kind of like you know, you started off in the trades, now you're in management. We were at St. Luke's Hospital, or talking to people from St. Luke's Hospital in Kansas City, Missouri. Again,
Right.
3 guys from the trades, you know, one was a landscaper, just disparate trades, not even, you know, one was an HVAC tech for a home residential.
Okay.
But, you know, guys who just kind of got into the trades and then found healthcare like you. Everybody finds it a little differently, right? Nobody's path is linear. And they love it. Donna, so we could keep talking about this, but lithium batteries. You know, you do a presentation on it. It was a great presentation.
Thank you.
Which I enjoyed. It's a facility-wide conversation these days, right? Give a little bit of background. Why did you decide that, hey, you know what, there's value in this presentation? And from your vantage point, and you talk about it really well in your presentation, how big of a risk do they pose, lithium batteries pose in hospitals and healthcare today?
I can't think of the guy's first name. I think his last name's Poe. I know it is. I think
Poe?
it's David Poe. David Poe from, he does a lot of the WVIZ, PBS, broadcasting. And he had a thing on, again, watching my documentaries.
I was going to say, when you said PBS, I'm like, oh, there's your documentary background.
Yep, exactly. So it was 2017 is when it came out. Speaking about the newer technology with the lithium-ion batteries. So, because I was even thinking about that, I'm like, how are the iPods and you know, if you remember iPods, and the iPhones and all this, how are they increasing these batteries? How is everything getting smaller, but the battery life is lasting longer? And, you know, you remember in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the cell phones came out and they were big and they were chunky and, you know, the battery died after like 3 hours. So, he did a great job of explaining this whole lithium-ion battery thing and the fire potentials. So then once I started looking into that, I started seeing that these people are the hoverboards. I think that was the year 2018 and 2007 or 2019. That's another reason why they keep me, is because I do have a pretty good memory on stuff. But that's when those hoverboards became a big deal. All the kids were getting them for Christmas, and then you kept seeing people's Christmas trees go up in flames because the hoverboard was being charged, and so those lithium-ion batteries. So that is what actually started it, was looking at it from the residential with the scooters and the hoverboards. And then 2017, Samsung had that debacle with their phones, that they had to do the recall on all their Galaxy phones that were causing starting fire on people's beds and stuff like that, was a defect in the lithium ion. So then I started thinking about it more and more. I'm like, well, if it's in their phones and it's in their laptops and it's in my laptop and it's in my phone, it's all through the hospital. I'm thinking, you know, and it was just one of those things. I just kept thinking about it. And so then I started looking, like, well, what does the Joint Commission say about this? What does DNV say about this? What does the Ohio Fire Code say about this? Nobody was saying anything about this. So everybody, the only thing that was coming out was that the technology is so new and evolving so fast that the codes and the standards can't keep up with it. The best that they've done are the NFPA 855 for the energy storage systems, which there is a chapter in there. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but there is a chapter in there that's starting to help with how to mitigate some of that. That was it from the last time I did my presentation. There was a young woman in the audience that actually brought that to my attention. I've just recently started to read that to see how do I apply that here. She had made me aware that it's not just in your phones, it's not just in your laptop, it's in your MRI machines now. It's in your CT machines. So the batteries that you had before, the lead acid batteries, now are being traded out for the lithium ion. How are we going to manage those systems? If you go to your clinical engineering department, you go to your IT departments, they have it in stacks on shelves. So when I see that, and I know that if one battery goes, it starts the whole chain of all the other ones. And so I just kept reading more and more things. You kept seeing things in New York is kind of like taking the bull by the horn, so to say. And unfortunately, I think they've probably had the highest amount of incidents in the old apartment buildings. They've certainly had probably the most casualties as a result of lithium-ion battery fires, but not in healthcare. Again, these are in residential places. But what can be applied in residential can be applied certainly in healthcare. So that's how I started looking at this. Ironically enough, we are hoping to have the policy finished in January, and I will gladly share this with anybody. Once we have our policy written, I will share it with anybody. And my very few basic takeaways on this: don't handle anything that's lithium ion that's on fire. Unless you can safely do so. But very rarely can you, because they have a tendency to pop and explode like a grenade or like a firecracker. If you're in a healthcare setting, you have oxygen, you have different med gases. If you have a large enough piece of equipment that is starting to smolder, starting to off gas, and starting to go into thermal runaway, close the door. Most healthcare facilities, especially the newer ones, are fully sprinklered. So let your sprinkler system do its job. Go to your nearest pull station, pull your pull station. Your fire department will be delighted to show up for something that's not burnt popcorn. And they will come, they will contain it, they'll put it out, and they will remove it and dispose of it for you.
The policy you're writing, or that Metro is writing, you just gave a great example of something, and again, it's not finished yet, as
Right.
you said, but what other elements are you containing within that policy?
So we still are trying to figure out a EV policy for the vehicles. I was just getting ready to spend insane amounts of money for Metros to get the fire blankets for the parking garages. And then in May of 2025, UL and NFPA came out with a press release condemning the use of those.
Really?
Saying that they're more of a hazard to the fire departments because they trap the flammable gases under them. And so firemen are naturally curious creatures, and so they lift that blanket to see if it's out, and there's still an ember, and it ignites those flammable gases and has caused a lot of harm and injury to several firemen.
Interesting. Huh.
So I'm back to square one. The Ohio Fire Code was supposed to come out in July, then in September, and now in December. And it's supposed to have some guidelines on that, on where you should or should not install them. A lot of places have put them in their parking garages. Metro's no different. I know the recommendations are not to put them in the core of your parking structure, that you should be putting them on the top floors. The reason for the top floors, so that the fire departments can use their ladder trucks and they can access it and start putting the copious amounts of water on them.
Huh. Interesting. So as you're researching this, it doesn't sound like there's and you talked about NFPA 855, but it doesn't sound like there's a whole bunch of relevant information to use. It's truly evolving.
It truly is evolving as fast as, again, like I said, I had this written up. I had it what garages I was going to use these blankets in. And I was still getting my ASHI presentation ready for July. And I was on the NFPA website, and I saw the NFPA press release with UL on the fire blankets. So that's how fast it changes. There's a lot of manufacturers out there right now that are trying to do, it almost reminds me of a K-class fire extinguisher, because it's a wet chemical that they're trying to have you put on whatever the battery is that's experiencing the thermal runaway. And then it kind of makes a blanket over it itself and then encases it. And almost like hardens around it. So it smothers the fire, and then it keeps it from where you can't just pull it off and then get the off gassing. I don't know how good those are yet. I don't know what the recommendations are. Anything new always needs to be tested. I don't want to be the person to be the field testing facility for that. I would like to see what the NFPA, I do follow the NFPA, I do believe in the work that they do. They put a lot of money, them and UL, Underwriters Laboratory, they are definitely putting the work in to do the research. If they back it, I would be more than happy to look at it and consider using things like that.
So this, obviously you are not a governing body. You're not the Joint Commission. You're not DNV. You're representing.
I'm just Donna.
That's right. You're Donna representing MetroHealth, but if you had to give from your experiences and from your research, if you had to provide to like somebody's watching this, hospitals, some maybe they haven't given the thought you had relative to kind of like an action item or something to either investigate or look into or do, what would it be? Realizing again that this is you speaking, it's Donna speaking, and
Right.
not anybody else.
Right. The opinions that are expressed are my own and not of MetroHealth, NFPAs, or Arroyo's laboratories.
That's
so
very good. Do you practice that?
No, but I should probably, because when I do my presentations. So what I have found with this, and that's why I said what I would like to have implemented into our policy is if you have a so your key fobs for your cars, just your little fobs, those have a lithium-ion battery. I would not recommend that you shut the door and call the fire department for that. Something as small as this, most places still have the plastic trash cans. If you have something small, a phone, the key fobs, things like that, if you can put a plastic garbage can or a metal garbage can over it to help contain it and reduce that risk of not just the off-gassing, but again, sometimes they explode and they pop. That's definitely been the issue with like a lot of the vape pens. You don't know who has a vape pen in their pocket. So those batteries do have a tendency when they start to go into thermal runaway, they pop and it sends that debris out and, can not only hurt you, it can burn you seriously. So those are some of the things that I would recommend. If it's a laptop, and I've even told my son this, if it's a laptop, I've told my son, don't be afraid to tell your classroom to leave the classroom, close the door, and pull a pull station. Again, I'm sure everybody that is in any kind of facilities management can relate to this with me. The fire department gets so irritated over the burnt popcorn. They will be thrilled, really, to come in and help you and help your facility if you have a big enough piece of equipment that's experiencing thermal runaway, or if you have enough devices. One of the other things that I want to look at and implore other people to look at, there are a lot of different explosion resistant cabinets out there that they're starting to gear more towards the lithium ion. So that's something that I want to look at for our IS department or IT department and our clinical engineering department. If you have the batteries, used batteries, our clinical engineering department is so proud of them. They took the initiative they keep them in a plastic, like a garbage can or like a 5-gallon bucket, but they tape them. They wrap tape all the way around them so they don't make the contact between the other batteries and cause it to start going in. Even though they have low charge left, you have enough of them clustered together. You don't want them to start into thermal runaway. But at the end of the day, just don't touch something if it's really off gassing, if it's sparking, walk away from it, because if it blows up, it will hurt you. There's numerous pictures on the internet of people that have touched things if they were off gassing and they have serious burns on their hands and their face and their arms.
I was going to ask you that about the thermal runaway. And maybe it's hard to quantify. How long does that process take? How long? I mean,
sometimes it can be very instant.
Yeah.
So I know that there's some manufacturers out there that are trying to make detection devices for it. So theoretically, from what I've read, some devices start by producing the gas that you can't see it and you can't smell it, but they're trying to make the detection devices that will be able to pick it up in advance. And that can sometimes happen a couple minutes prior to. By the time you see it off gassing and you start to see that smoke coming out of it, you can be anywhere from seconds to a couple minutes before it actually, combusts and bursts into flames.
So
but sometimes it happens very quickly.
Yeah, doesn't mean it hasn't it's not happening.
Correct.
Perfect.
We had a piece of lab equipment. Don't ask me what it was. It was a large piece of lab equipment in the lab. Nobody knew that it had lithium-ion batteries in it. It set off the smoke detection. Obviously facilities, we responded, unplugged it and found, and that was just it. No, we called the fire department. Ultimately, the fire department came out and discovered that that's what it was. With it plugged in, it was going into thermal runaway. It did not explode. It just did the off-gassing, but we found that it was lithium-ion batteries in there. Unplugging it is what stopped the thermal runaway, and then it didn't explode. But that's why it is in so many things. You just don't even know what it's in. It's in so many things.
Yeah, and as you were telling the story, that was what I was thinking. That's kind of the scary part, is you don't know that it is until you experience something like that.
If you have an AED in your facility, it has a lithium-ion battery.
Yeah.
So, and most facilities now have numerous AEDs throughout the place. I know, I don't know that our MRI, that was one of the things that I had reached out, and I have to go through my emails and see if I've got a response, but that's what I was checking with our radiology department to see, do you know if you have in any of our newer MRI machines or CT machines, do you know if they have the lithium-ion batteries? We had an incident that really highlighted this about 18 months ago. It was just a box it was 10 or 12 thermometers in a box, cooler thermometers. So they had the glycol in them so that they don't freeze. And they put them in the kitchen office overnight. And the cook came in that morning at 5 o'clock in the morning and alerted the facilities management person that just happened to be walking through that, hey, there's all this smoke in here. And so it had just put itself out. But the box did at some point, one of the batteries was defective, caught on fire, caught several of the other device batteries on fire. We think it was the glycol. When it melted out of the tube is what actually put the fire out. But it still was very nasty, toxic gas that filled this room. So they had to open the door, open all the other doors to get the air circulating. And then that was the big question. What do we do with the box that's down there that burnt the carpet, burnt the file cabinet that it was up against? Our guys had, and again, this wasn't the right process. This definitely was not something I would recommend. Again, I would call the fire department going forward, but this was our first incident with it. Our guy did use heavy gloves, picked it up, put it on a cart, and put it in the one mechanical room. So then I saw it, I'm like, I want that in my mechanical room. So I picked it up and took it outside and left it outside the building. So, and again, knowing what 18 months ago. So I've learned a lot since then. Don't do that. But yeah, it's definitely, it can go from off-gassing to stopping to off-gassing to go into a full thermal runaway to where it actually catches fire and explodes.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and your initial lesson is the one that does call the fire department.
Right. Right.
And
but nobody wants to do that. They always think that they're going to get in trouble. And no, our buildings call the fire department all the time for the burnt popcorn. Please pull the pull station for an actual battery fire.
What keeps you coming back every day to Metro? Not lithium. What keeps you engaged? What keeps you as passionate as you are?
Knowing that I'm making a difference, or at least believing that I'm making a difference, believing, kind of two different things, hoping I'm making a difference.
Sure.
I work with a great staff. I work with a young lady named Nicole. She's great to work with, and we seem to be aligned on our common goals. And everything that I'm doing, I try to make sure I leave that blueprint. So in the event that something happened and I didn't show up to work, people wouldn't have to start over from square one. That there's a foundation laid and they're not starting from scratch and they're able to continue on. I come because every day I come to work because I want it to be a safer environment where people, the last thing they have to worry about is if there's going to be a fire or if there's going to be a mechanical failure that causes harm to the staff, the patients, or the visitors.
Wow, great answer. And you hit on one of the things, and we're going to stop here, but you could roll it out. Something that I think a lot of organizations don't do is that knowledge preservation and that built-in succession planning that year, because you're right. I mean, you never know what can happen, like this morning, right? Snowing, so knowledge preservation is critical. So I want to thank Donna for appearing on the Healthcare Facilities Network. Donna, thank you.
It was my pleasure, Peter. Anytime.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you tuning in to the Healthcare Facilities Network. We will be back in the future with another episode. Donna, thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too, Peter.
If you want to be a guest on a future episode of the Healthcare Facilities Network, go to healthcarefacilitiesnetwork.com and let us know who you are and what you want to talk about, because together we can solve this critical aging issue.